Welcome to this webinar where we will look at how you can recognize firefighting patterns. And this is a collaboration between GLSS and Lean Tech. I'm Sissel from Lean Tech, and with me I have Karlo, the founder of GLSS. Welcome to you, Karlo.
Hi, Sissel. Hi, everyone. Looking forward to our presentation today. And thank you, Sissel, for creating and facilitating this webinar with us.
Yes, thank you. Let's dig into firefighting. First of all, let's look at what is firefighting. Firefighting is reactive problem solving, meaning that we are addressing urgent issues without fixing root causes. And the reason why we are doing firefighting is because it's urgent, but it's also due to some patterns that we are going to talk about today. We are going to look at historical pattern, how problem solving always have been reactive. We are going to look at biological trigger, meaning we're going to look into how our brain works and how stress activates fast response system. And we are also going to look at organizational reward. Companies celebrate quick fixes over prevention. So we want you to think about who are the heroes in your organization. Are you celebrating the firefighters, or are you celebrating the people working on prevention? And I like to share a story from my own work life, where I was a project manager for implementing a new IT system. And I had planned to spend the day working preventively on, trying to prevent all the issues that we had by documenting, creating checklists and instructions and procedures. And this was really hard work to do because I didn't really know where to start. There had been so many issues. And this task needed a lot of concentration, focus, and structure. And my motivation to do this task was very, very low. So I had a lot of resistance. And I tried to convince myself that I need to start this job. But then the phone rang, and there was a fire. There was an issue with this IT system, so I needed to drop the task I was going to do and move into reactive problem solving. And as the phone rang, I could feel the relief in my entire body, because I was so happy to escape from this more concentrating and focusing and starting a task I didn't really know how to start. So all day went to firefighting. I felt very productive. We were able to fight the fire, and I ended the day without doing what I planned to do, but feeling very productive. But the thing is that if I had worked on the task I had planned to do, I could have prevented these issues from happening in the first place. So while it felt very productive, it was not really productive. I don't know if you have some similar experiences, Karlo.
I can only imagine how much time is wasted in organizations putting out fires. I think, Sissel, what you're sharing is it's very natural for us to fall into that state of wanting to put out fires because there is an immediate need. But
Yes.
The challenge for most people is that immediate need often supersedes what the long-term goal is. So it's short-term reward, in a sense, short-term emotional reward at the expense of long-term stability. So it's almost like another example could be in the real world, right? So it could be if you're riding your bike and your bike gets a flat tire. Some folks might naturally just want to say, hey, I need to put air in my tire. Or if you're driving a car and your tire pressure is low, you just put air in it. But that's a short-term fix. But the long-term fix is that you probably want to get that tire inspected, see if there's a hole in it or what's causing the air to come out, and address that long-term fix. This is, I think, very timely for people in business, but also people in their regular daily life.
Yeah, I agree. And also I want to mention this experience I shared. There was no doubt for me what I needed to prioritize when we talk about organizational reward. I knew that the organization wanted me to prioritize the firefighting. It's more important than the preventive work that can be done later. So time and stress is why we are doing also this firefighting and also these patterns that we will dig more into. So let's start with the historical, that firefighting is in our DNA. And my family is from the northern part of Norway, where we have been fishermen for generations. And as a fisherman, you need to be a good reactive problem solving. There could be different weather conditions. You need to respond immediately in order to both survive and also to return home safely. So because of this, it was the reactive problem solvers that survived. And it's still part of our DNA. We are still the reactive problem solvers. But if we think about the consequences, we can imagine this iceberg, which is the cost of firefighting. And we can see that there are some visible costs above the surface. That could be overtime expenses. It could be customer complaints and compensations. That's cost that is possible to quantify. But the underneath the surface, we all know that the iceberg can have a massive surface underneath as well, and that represents the hidden cost. It's underneath the surface, and it's cost that is not that easy to quantify. It could be employee burnout, if you think about the consequences of all this stress. It could be lost opportunities. It could be missed market opportunities or decreasing team morale. It's hard to quantify, but it's stealing your capacity for long-term success. So it's important to be aware of the cost of firefighting.
Sissel, I think a lot of people only measure or calculate what the short-term fixed costs are. Unfortunately, the time and energy and all of that cost of poor quality over time is exponentially higher than the short-term fixed cost. So some examples of this might be budgets, whether it's government agencies or large companies or even small companies, right? I think we all want to fix things and we have the intent of wanting to do good things and do the right things and make customers happy. But there are so many unintended consequences of that, whether it's infrastructure projects that are not necessarily calculated or spent on the right things. And then what ends up happening is you have lots of infrastructure built, and it may not be necessarily what the community needs or up to the quality the community needs. And then when there are natural disasters or just things in business, right? Like let's say, as you were talking about, an IT system goes down. If you're not prepared with all of the things that you had been just talking about, all of those backup plans and backup systems, the results can be catastrophic. And especially when that happens over and over, there's a lot of demoralization, as you're discussing, right? So it can be demoralization of your team internally. It can be the demoralization of the community or the customers that you're serving. And that deteriorates trust, right? And over time, all of the hidden costs really result in communities and companies with culture. It's hard to recover from that, right? And so what we're hoping to do today is to highlight some of those patterns and give everyone some ideas and solutions on how to address them ethically for long-term sustainability.
Yes, very well said, Karlo. Good examples. Let's look at the biological pattern that our brains are wired for fast reactions. And the brain has two systems, system 1 and system 2. It's from Daniel Kahneman. And the system 1 is the emotional system in our brain, while system 2 is the rational system. And actually, it was Jonathan Haidt that pictured this elephant and the rider, which is a good picture of how this two system works. So the elephant is focusing on the short term. It seeks comfort and dopamine, and it has a lot of automated behavior that we are not even aware of. And it has also very quick emotional responses. So the elephant is the emotional system, while the rider is more focused on long-term goal. It's the rational thinker, the problem solver, the analytical approach. So that's the rider. And the thing is, you need to know about the different capacity of these two systems. I have no idea how they have measured this, but John Bargh at Yale has actually investigated how much data these two systems can process. And system 1, the elephant, can process 11 million bits of information per second, while the rider can only process 40 bits of information per second. So that's a quite huge difference in capacity. And you can probably imagine, Karlo, if these two systems disagree, would you bet on? Would you bet on the elephant or the rider when it comes to the direction?
I would say most times the elephant would win.
Yeah, it has a huge weight advantage. And it's important to be aware of the different capacity of these two systems, because the rider has very limited capacity compared to the elephant. So the rider needs to focusing on the long-term goal and picking the things that are most important, focus on that, and then motivate the elephant to change behavior, because it's difficult to make the elephant change behavior, and the elephant focus on the short term. So in order for the elephant to focus more on the long term, it needs to get motivated through emotions. So it's important to understand that the elephant is motivated by emotions. So you need to trigger some emotions, and you also need to be clear on the direction. You need to remove obstacles, and you need to follow up until the new habit sticks. Because at least I have experienced, it's really hard to change a habit. It needs some effort over time in order for the habit to stick.
I also think this is a really great analogy for a couple of things. One, how the elephant could be an example of nature in general. There are so many things that are outside of our control, and we just need to learn how to balance those things. And if we know that we should do some of the things that Sissel, you just mentioned, related to coaching and discipline and habits and positive reinforcement and possibly even negative reinforcement, right? Because that is a factor. Then we, as humans and individuals, the rider, would be a lot more successful if we took everything into consideration, not necessarily just our own need, right? And so from an organizational perspective, to be processed similarly, in that you have many team members. You might have a small team, you might have a large team, you might have a very large enterprise, but there are things that are outside of your immediate control. Every human and every person and every part of nature has their own interests. And that's something that we should consider when we are trying to create more balance between what we ourselves think should be done right and what our immediate needs are. Because again, that boils back down to short-term fixes that make us feel good versus what is the best for the longevity and the sustainability and the good of everyone in the company and then everyone on the planet.
I agree, Karlo, and I think since our own elephant is a lot of automated behavior and it's unconscious, when we are working as a team, we can imagine how many unconscious motivation we have and different agendas. So it's really, really important to understand the importance of being clear on directions and removing obstacles and motivating.
That's a great example, Sissel. And you could even think of how many elephants are there in the room, or is there a stampede coming towards me? How can we all work together to channel that stampede?
And the last pattern that we will talk about is the organizational reward, how companies reward quick fix over more preventive work. A lot of organizations where I worked, we tend to recognize the team staying late in order to fix an urgent issue and deliver in time for a customer. It's very, very visible. And it requires a lot of effort, so of course they should be recognized. But the next day there might be someone sitting down quietly, analyzing what happened and preventing things from happening again. But this is more quiet, it's not so visible. And very often we forget to recognize the effort of working proactive, working preventive. And if we want to change to work more preventive rather than just be firefighting, we need to reward the people that are working preventive. We need to be aware of their effort and find a way to have reward system that also pay attention to the proactive, the more quiet problem solving and root cause analysis.
Awesome. I think there needs to be a paradigm shift in the way that we build our cultures. The practices that you're describing, Sissel, I think historically we have generally rewarded the charismatic people who present the solution to problems and are talking about the problems and how they might have contributed to fixing them. That more calm, quiet, problem-solving demeanor isn't necessarily always recognized or, as you're putting here, rewarded. And unfortunately, I think that spirals into many other things, many unintentional things where you're rewarding behavior that may not necessarily be what is going to be sustainable or drive a company to grow in the long term. So just for me as an example, when I'm working with even myself or our teams, it's really important to acknowledge the folks who are working in the background and making sure that things are taken care of, and not necessarily only the folks that are kind of more outspoken, I should say. There's a saying that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And oftentimes, if we're working in a company or we're working in a team, or you're working with a customer, oftentimes we chase after things that are not necessarily what the true thing that we should be chasing after and then fixing are, right? We should be looking at what are going to create more stability and foundational processes and systems versus chasing after things that are maybe feel important in that moment or are drawing your attention in that moment, but are not what needs to be focused on.
Yeah, and if we think about the fisherman and the reactive problem solving and how important it was to be reactive, the problems that we face now, it requires completely different approach because it's more complex, and if it's always the one that are shouting highest that are listened to, it's not necessarily the best solution. So to collaborate on finding the best solution and spending time to hear the different perspective and discuss to have, the same common understanding of the issue, that's something that is really important, but it's not time for that in firefighting. We should spend more time to hear all the different voices, to hear the different perspective, and then have a common understanding before we conclude.
Yeah, and the only other thing that I'll mention, diversity of thought is something that we should educate and train our teams and communities to have open discussion. And that's why education is so important, and just foundationally helping us think freely and put our ideas together. Everyone should be able to decide on what is the best outcome long term for the team, and instead of just one person making a decision right away. And I'm not saying that there are not times where we need to do that. There are definitely moments where someone just needs to take leadership and make those decisions, but that responsibility is earned. So appreciate you really focusing on this topic.
Yes, and we have an exercise for you. We have 10 symptoms of firefighting mode, and you can read through these 10 symptoms and do an evaluation of your own organization. Are you familiar with these symptoms? And I think most organizations will have some kind of firefighting. I don't know what you think, Karlo, but that's quite common to have a bit of firefighting. But what we are talking about is more a balance, where it's not only firefighting. We are also working preventive, proactive to prevent issues from happening again. It might require immediate attention, immediate problem solving, being reactive. But after we have the fire is gone, we should investigate what happened and prevent this problem from occurring again. So this exercise is a reflection for you. It's quite common to have a couple of symptoms, but if you have, let's say, more than 5, maybe it's time to rethink how you are solving problems and focus on being more preventive.
A good rule of thumb for this might be that you spend 80% of your time on strategic things and always leave 20% of your time to put out fires. Just because in business and in life, things are always going to come up. But if we use that 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle to try to create more foundation or stability, then we'll restore a lot more of the balance. And it will definitely also help other aspects of life. In business, we think about the financial aspect, but we also should be considering the wellness of our teams and how that impacts their families and their communities, but also their performance in the company. So there really is a performance or financial and also cultural benefit to thinking more in line with and being more reflective, as Sissel, you use to make sure that we're not only focused on profit or short-term fixes. It's the real way to sustainability and longevity, whether it's a company or a team or a project, is that we are very reflective on how many times, even take a tally of how many times a day you might be ending up in one of these examples that we have on screen.
Yes, and if we use the 80-20 rule, Karlo, it means that you should only recognize 2 of them. If it's more than that, you should try to work more preventive. We have talked about the cost of firefighting compared to the iceberg, where you have some visible cost and also some hidden cost that can be massive. For us to have some changes to work more preventive, we need to motivate the elephant, as we talked about. And sometimes costs can be enough for a manager who is responsible for the budget. It might be enough to know that it's so costly to be doing firefighting to create motivation for a change. But for others, for the team, it might be more important to focus on how does it feel to work in an organization where there's firefighting all the time? How does it feel to be constantly interrupted in what you plan to do, to be doing firefighting instead? And you need to come back, you need to catch up on what you were doing. and you lose momentum, and it can be frustrating and stressful to continuously work in these kind of conditions. And also, if we think about situation where you think back and you realize that you didn't do the best decision, if you think back to those kind of situations, it's usually stress that makes you take bad decisions. When you are in a very stressful situation, it's really, really easy to do mistakes, and also to have risk, as mentioned here. It could be safety and compliance and other things that could happen when you are very stressed and when you're working in a firefighting mode. The probability of things happening is much greater when you are stressed, and stress is a situation you are often in when you are doing firefighting.
And I think that this is definitely a skill that needs to be practiced. We're hoping today that we're creating awareness for you so that you are able to just notice when it's happening. The temporary feel-good fixes that we're discussing here are, again, natural for us, but we also need to understand that we have control over our own behavior and our own actions. And if we take accountability for that, knowing that things are not always going to be perfect, we all make mistakes, and we're all going to inevitably end up focusing in on the short-term fixes and missing out on some of the waste, that's fine. This is just a way to start. I think, as Sissel, you were discussing, if we try to find, as an example, if something happened after you're done doing firefighting, maybe a reward could be a more aligned reward. Instead of just rewarding the short-term fix, is, hey, what was the root cause of this? And we don't need to dig into fixing it, the root cause right then, but if you and your team can do an exercise called the 5 whys, which we might talk about later and is going to be one of our future content pieces, identifying and investigating and brainstorming together is just the first step. So that could be a way to reward root cause analysis or long-term fixes instead of just rewarding the fixing of that short-term firefighting.
Yeah, and we will talk more about that, as you said, in a later webinar about how to address the root causes. So one way to move from firefighting to prevention could be to just imagine what it would look like. That's something the elephant likes, to just feel how is it to be doing less firefighting. If you can reduce firefighting or crisis situations with 50%, how would your life-work balance look like? How would it feels like to go to work when you have more predictable workday? It's not incidents happening all the time. So that can be something to help you find the motivation to move to more prevention.
Yeah, like imagine yourself being able to leave work on time and going home to your family or friends not being stressed out or frantic, and that that resonates a lot with people too, right? Like if you are constantly in a stressful state, you're maybe irritable to your coworkers, productivity lowers, and then when you go home to your family, that could result in relationships and things being a little bit difficult. And so this is not just a business productivity focus. There is integration into the larger scope of health for yourself and your community. Again, we have 50% on the screen here, but we can even start to think about what would 5% look like, what would 10% look like. And this is it's a journey. Our goal here is to help you try to clear the path for you so that you can find a way forward.
Yes, and if we look at these two boats, these two team of fishermen, there's some difference between them. You can see on the left side that there is a bit of chaos. There are a lot of dead fishes. The team is a bit stressed. They don't look that organized. If we compare it to the right side, where the team is more relaxed, it doesn't seem like there is a lot of stress. They are very well organized. They have planned ahead, and there are no dead fish. So if you wanted to work on a fishing boat, Karlo, which boat would you prefer to work on?
Definitely the right, but I do think that there is fun and opportunity to help the people on the left. So
Yes.
I would probably try to get on both at some point.
Yes.
And I also think that when you walk into a room or a building or a store, let's say, you can sort of get an idea or a feeling of how well that team or that store or that group of people collaborate and how organized they are. And that definitely trickles down to the customer. So when you have teams that are stressed out or frantic, the customer is going to feel that. And the teams around that team are going to feel that. I think it's really important to acknowledge those instinctual feelings and analyze things before taking action, because oftentimes, again, if we ourselves know that there are problems, it takes other people a little bit of time to also get into that same mindset. So we want to start to educate them and guide them along the way, because they may not be where we are yet. And so that's something to be mindful of also. You see, and that results in to productivity. As Sissel, we mentioned, there was dead fish, there's waste, right? Imagine what that's costing the company. Imagine if you are in a sustenance community, how many people you were not able to feed because of the stress and frantic behavior or that cost of poor quality or disorganization. It could mean life or death for those communities. And oftentimes in the business world, it could mean, unfortunately, layoffs or lost productivity and things like that.
Yes, and the thing is that if you're working on the boat on the left side and you've never seen the boat on the right side, you are not aware of this, because it's part of how you work and it's part of the culture, and it creates. You need to become aware of it. And once you become aware of it, then it kind of becomes obviously. But it's the first step is to just become aware that what we are doing is firefighting, and there is some good opportunities if we move to more preventive work.
Great advice. It's almost like you're saying, become the observer, remove yourself from the situation, and then observe how you're responding and how the rest of your team is responding, because that will allow you to think more clearly.
Yeah, definitely. So our advice is to become more balanced. You might need to do some firefighting from time to time, but the key is to also work more preventive. Like Karlo mentioned, maybe 20% firefighting, 80% on the long term. And as we have looked at, how important it is to be working more proactive instead of just having a reactive approach. And once you become aware of that your organization are doing a lot of firefighting and you want to do the shift to work more preventive, then you can start by identifying waste. We looked at the fishing boat and we saw a lot of waste on that boat. So be aware of waste in your organization. Waste is things that are not creating value for the customer. It can be things that are not correctly the first time, or it does not involve a change. So look for those kind of waste. And a good advice, if you want to do something with the waste, you can join our training. The Yellow Belt training is a good way to both learn how to identify waste, but also how to do something about it. And in our next webinar, we will also look at how can you move to work more preventive, meaning how can we identify the root causes of the issues. You might have to solve it instantly, being reactive, but when you have better time, you need to investigate it and prevent this issue from happening again. And that's something we will talk about in our next webinar.
And we recommend identifying waste in processes that you are currently very close to at work. It might be a process that only you are working on. It might be a process that a couple of different people in your company are working on with you. So just start small. You don't need to find a huge problem in your company and try to start identifying waste. The goal here is to really just, as Sissel mentioned, become aware of it. We don't need to jump to conclusions on how to fix that waste. And definitely it's not a good idea to jump to conclusions until you find what the root cause that's causing that waste is. The next webinar and trainings that we'll share with you are really clear on how to do that. If you've never identified waste or completed a process improvement project before, no worries. Our goal is to help guide you and, again, clear that path for you. So regardless of your background or experience, you might be a student who's just graduated high school or a senior level executive, we make it clear for everyone. So thank you for your time. And Sissel, appreciate you inviting me to join this webinar with you. And we're looking forward to next time.
Yes, I look also very forward to next time, Karlo. So thank you everyone for participating. And I hope you learned something during this webinar.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.